nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Episode 230 of Sports Card Nation. Got a great episode on tap. A lot of stuff pertaining to this episode. Let's talk about it. One thing we pride with the show, right? The tagline, the hobby is the people. All people from young kids all the way up to older folks like me and older, and CEOs and everybody. We've had a lot of people on the show, and I didn't plan it for episode 230 exactly like it turned out, but I think it turned out kind of interesting. So prior to this episode, we had 198 different guests on the show, different people on the show. Well, we have two guests on today's show, making them guest number 199 and guest number 200, the 200th different person on the show. And two great guests they are. I'm going to tease here before I reveal. I have done promo, so you might already know. But, getting in the hobby in 1979 as a 7-year-old kid, and then staying in the hobby and growing up through that era, right, of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and then all the way through. One of the gentlemen on the show was very instrumental in my card upbringing, if you will. And most people in the hobby know his work, know of him, but may not know the story of him. And we're going to cover a little bit about that today. But that's the legendary artist, Mr. Dick Perez. Dick Perez is the father of the Diamond King. Him and his partner, Frank Steele, famous for their postcards, their Hall of Fame work. He was official artist for the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's done other works as well. But in the hobby, we're very familiar with his work on the Donruss Diamond Kings. And we're going to learn about how those players got selected, his start. It's a story of perseverance. He came over as a young man from his native Puerto Rico by himself on the plane. We're going to learn about that. And also joining him is acclaimed award-winning director Marq Evans, who is doing a biopic due out in 2024 called The Diamond King, no less. And both gentlemen are going to talk about what they do, and kind of, Dick Perez's trajectory from young man coming over from Puerto Rico to now hobby legend. But more than that, just a great guy. So this is a really, really cool episode, if I may be so bold to say. And when I know I say this every so often, when I started this show in November 2018, which seems like decades ago, it's 5 years, but in content creation, I guess that's a long time. I've interviewed great people on this show, and everyone is great that's been on the show. But to think that when Diamond Kings came out in 1982, I was 10 years old. To think, social media wasn't around yet, podcasts weren't around yet, but to think, 10-year-old me, to think like, 40-something years later, I get to talk to the man behind Diamond Kings and learn about him, would have been something else, and yet here we are. So without further ado, let's get this show started.
This is Sports Card Nation. Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Hey there, this is John Keating from That 70s Card Show with a friendly reminder that the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, Do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Introducing the only auction house dedicated exclusively to the cards of the 1990s. Josh Adams and John Linden have created an auction company solely for the rare, scarce, and hard-to-find inserts and parallels of the 1990s. Whether it be basketball, baseball, football, or hockey, 90s auctions will have it. The auctions will consist of smaller lots between 100 and 120 in total, so your cards won't get lost in the shuffle. Founded on the principles of fairness, honesty, and integrity, 90s Auctions was created by collectors for collectors. Register and co-sign today at 90sauctions.com. That's 90s auctions.com.
Hi, this is Pat Hughes, Cubs announcer, coming to you from the Sports Card Shop in beautiful New Buffalo, Michigan. The Gocher family has built an incredible place here for collectors to buy, sell, and trade cards and memorabilia. Be sure to stop by and let them show you around. TheSportsCardShop.com, connecting sports, athletes, the hobby, and collectors around the world.
I am very excited to have the next two gentlemen on the Sports Card Shop guest line. One is a legend of the hobby, and one's an extraordinary filmmaker. We'll start with Mr. Marq Evans. His films, The Glamour and the Squalor, a biopic about rock DJ Marco Collins, Clay Dream, about the life of master clay animator Will Vinton, and we're going to talk about a new project that he's releasing very shortly. And a man that, if you're in the hobby or a card collector, he's synonymous in my book with the hobby. Great artist, Mr. Dick Perez. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, John.
So I'll start with this. I think you both kind of share a thread in common, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. You both, when you were younger, wanted to be Major League Baseball players. Is that right or wrong?
Oh yeah, I certainly. Yep.
Go ahead, Dick.
Oh yes, I came to this country in 1947 at 6 years old, and one of the things that the New York offered for me was the game of baseball. It was the mecca of baseball to me as I look back, because three teams were here, and you could have a bunch of friends, and you had three different teams being favored. Anyway. I don't know the language. I made friends, but it was playing baseball every day, and I mean ball. I don't mean in a ballpark so much as these playgrounds that had softball fields, so to speak. And we did that, and we even played hardball on those things. But that was an introduction, and I wanted to be identified with America, and it looked like everybody loved baseball. And to me, the most American-looking, and I say that in quotes, was Mickey Mantle. And he was a member of the Yankees, and another friend who I was very close with was a Yankee fan, and that's how you become fans of something, when your peers and your friends and what's going on. So that's me.
Yeah, and my history with baseball is not as interesting as Dick's, where he learned about this whole country through baseball and through Mickey Mantle. As a youngster, I just grew up playing the game, loved the game. It was what I did with all my free time. Was I wanted to play baseball. It's funny, I have a 6-year-old nephew right now who is following kind of that track. Like, you can't hang out with him without him being like, let's go pitch to me, and that's how I was as a kid. I was always wanting to play, always collecting cards, and I played through high school. Was a good pitcher, led our league in ERA my senior year. We won the state championship, but and I had some offers to play in college, but kind of realized at that point it was time to just move on with my life, as tough as that was. But that's what gets me so excited about this project. This is the first sports film that I've been making, first baseball film, and it's just great to be kind of back to the roots in that way.
Yeah, I know you mentioned you collect cards, Mark. I mean, I'm sure you saw Diamond Kings back in the day. Did you have? I mean, obviously I know the answer to this, but to think, that you would be, doing a film about Mr. Perez. Here you are with the Diamond Kings in hand, and all these years later, you're going to be doing a film pertaining to him. I mean, what's that like? I imagine it's a little surreal and that, but
so as I was collecting as a kid, and I grew up and collected in the the heyday of the Diamond Kings. I think I started collecting in probably 1987, and 82 was the first year of the Diamond Kings. So those were really important cards to me. But to be candid, when you're 7 years old, you're not really thinking at that point about who painted these, right? Like, you just know that this is a cool card and it's Ken Griffey Jr. or Bo Jackson or Wade Boggs and my favorite players. So it wasn't until last year, I've got a 12-year-old son, and he kind of fell in love with baseball really last year as Julio Rodriguez came on the scene. That was the player he really enjoyed watching, and so he got interested in baseball cards, and we were going through my whole collection. And it was then when as I was going through and looking at the Diamond Kings, thinking, what's the story of Dick Perez, the artist that painted these? And so that was kind of my, that's when I went to school on the life and works of Dick Perez, and was just blown away. Obviously not just by the Diamond Kings, but the fact that he's painted the entire history of the game, and 20 plus years as the National Baseball Hall of Fame official painter and official artist of the Phillies for decades. And I just thought this is a great story, and it would be a great film. And so I reached out to Dick. We didn't know each other, and we hit it off, and it's been a lot of fun for the past several months making this film, and really excited for people to see it too, because I think they're going to be really blown away by his story.
Yeah, no doubt. Dick, you came over, if I got my facts not crossed up, you came over, like you said, you were 6 years old from Puerto Rico to New York. Am I right? Did you were put on a plane by yourself at 6?
Well, I was put on the plane by my mother and a bunch of other Puerto Ricans. But what they told me was, look, I didn't know the people who I didn't even know what I was going to be doing in a plane. But they told me that when I get to the other side, stewardess will take me into the welcoming. At those days, you could come right up to the door of the plane, practically. And these people will know your name. They'll be happy to see you. They'll hug, they'll kiss you, they'll pick you up, and they'll take you with them. Go. And that's what happened. And I get these wonderful people that came with one was my aunt, which was a sister of my recently deceased father. And she was staying with her aunt in this big house in the Bronx. And, they took me in. And then about a year later, my mother and my sister followed, because we had raised enough fare to get, for them to come. And, we started our life basically from the Bronx. We really went for most of my young life to Harlem, to Manhattan, where I felt at home. And there were a lot of Latinos there. And so, it was, I find it wonderful. I love my first malted milk was introduced to me, which was like unbelievable. Egg cream, snow. I mean, it was a wonderland. So it was a thing that I'm sure a lot of other immigrants, because even though we are part of the United States, we still come from another place that doesn't speak the language. So I consider myself, in a way, an immigrant, which is not, it's okay. That's what this country really is, for the most part, composed of. So, and my life went on from there. I did aspire to play baseball, and for the longest time, I thought I would be doing it. Like you decide to be an engineer, and all you got to do is do it. And you might not be the best engineer, but you're an engineer. Well, that doesn't work in baseball. You got to be like the best ever. And I played in some good teams, youth team. I never made my high school team, which should have told me something. But I tried for every position, even though I was left-handed. I even tried catching. And it eventually. And I used to draw too alongside of that. So eventually, eventually, instead of playing more and drawing less, I started to draw more and play less. And I didn't plan my future. I didn't plan that I was going to be doing baseball art or anything like that. I just liked to draw, and still didn't know what. Since I'm not going to be a ball player, what am I going to be? And I never really addressed that. You're a kid, and you don't make those decisions. So that's how I grew up.
I gotta ask you, like, I'm still scared to fly, and I'm 50 years old. You're 6 years old. I mean, you're like you said, your mom put you on the plane and gave you directions. But I mean, talk about like what's going. At 6, you're on a plane by yourself. Are you scared? Like, what's going through your mind as a young man?
Well, what happened was. It's interesting you asked that question because I get on the plane. They put one of these Pan American, I forget what the name of but they were all propeller planes, four prop on either wing. Excuse me, 2 on either wing. And I was put by the window, sitting there, and I'm looking at these engines going around, and we're in the air, and all of a sudden one of them stops, and I say, that ain't right. I mean, that doesn't seem like something that should happen because So I was a little apprehensive about that, but I didn't know, I didn't have a fear. I was still little, but it just something that didn't seem right. But that has lived with me. And I too am very apprehensive about flying because of that one little thing.
Yeah, I have to take a Xanax usually before I fly. I've gotten better. The older I get, and the more
right.
I do it. Mark, you're famous for doing some great documentaries about some incredible and interesting folks. What is it when you got into filmmaking? Did you know you wanted to go down the alley of documentaries? Kind of how did that all sort of that was your lane that you kind of went into?
Yeah, so because I grew up wanting to be a baseball player, I didn't grow up wanting to be a filmmaker or thinking about that, and I kind of stumbled into it. My older stepbrother, Kevin Nolan, he did grow up wanting to be a filmmaker, and he's 10 years older than I am. So he went to college, not to film school. He went to University of Washington, but right after he graduated, he moved to LA, and he was, sweeping floors, getting coffees, doing, starting from the bottom in that industry, and eventually, made some films of his own. He directed his first feature film was called Americano that starred Dennis Hopper and Joshua Jackson, and so he kind of like opened up some of those doors. And then in 2010 is when really I caught the filmmaking bug because my stepdad, my stepbrother's dad, passed away, and at the same time, pretty much, was a big earthquake in Haiti that killed like 250,000 people, and we just kind of felt this attraction to that place and that story, and so we went down there and started making a documentary that we're still making today, 13 years later. There's a reason this will be like about a 15-year project before it gets released, and that was my film school. That's where I learned how to shoot, learned how to edit. I raised the money for it. And I just fell in love with doing this thing. And so I just went all in. I was looking for stories, looking for things to make movies about, and came across the story of Marco Collins, who was a radio DJ, who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for kind of pressing play on the whole grunge music scene that came out of Seattle in 1991. So he was the first to play Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains, bands like that. And so that was just an interest. Like I loved that music growing up, and I just thought this is a great story. More people outside of Seattle should know this name. And it was kind of similar, I think, with Clay Dream, where you've got this animator that everybody in the animation world knew and loved, but nobody else really knew that story, especially outside of Portland, Oregon. And I grew up with those characters that Will Vinton had created. And so it's a similar thing here with Dick Perez. I grew up with these cards, and I just had an interest, and it was just, on a whim, reached out, like just thought this would be a cool story. And fortunately, Dick was open-minded to it. But I think that first call, I think we talked for a couple hours on that first conversation, and just it was a good feeling, and we just thought, well, yeah, let's see what happens here, and it's been great. So I think it was just kind of following the curiosities and things that interest me, and figuring there's other people that would be interested in this as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And you kind of learned trial by fire, right? You kind of learned in doing it. Sometimes that's the best way. People will tell you that's the best way to, hone your craft. It's just doing it rather than...
Well, you definitely learn way more, I think, with mistakes than you do successes, right? So
yeah.
hopefully I got a lot of those out of the way early. But
Yeah, Dick, what age did you realize, like, hey, I can draw, I can paint? Like, for me, my dad's is a very good artist. I can't draw a stick figure, and my son's very good, so it skipped me. It's like every other. When did you personally say, hey, I enjoy this, and I think I'm pretty good at it?
Well, I don't remember the beginning. I remember doing it all my life. And mostly they were drawings, just pencil drawings along margins of notebooks of caricatures of my classmates and maybe what I thought Mickey Mantle looked like and things like that. So, and then it was an evolution that was interrupted by the reality of the fact that how do you make a living doing this? And I know that you can by that time I was pretty much in high school and all. And I knew there was such things as this graphic design. And that I knew that's going to give me a job somewhere, I hope. So I pursued a lot of education in graphic design. I only had one painting course in art school and one drawing course in art school. The rest of it was all color and design and graphics and typography and stuff like that. And then I got into the field as that. But the fortuity is that I met people that required illustrations for probably like the Phillies or Villanova University or the Philadelphia Eagles. And I started toying around. I would hire people to do that for the magazines I was designing for these people, like the yearbooks and so forth. And I started, and I just kept, fooling around with it. And I look back on those paintings, I say, how did I ever think I could go any further than this? But I did, and they accepted them. And, I just kept doing it. And eventually it became my sole purpose for being an artist.
Now, I'm assuming, did you collect cards as a young man? I know you were a fan of the sport. Did cards come along with that? Was that a natural?
Yeah, I think those things happen to just about every little kid that loves baseball. I think that's why the cards are so successful. And at that time, the Topps had a monopoly on the thing. But to me, every spring was like, it wasn't just the beginning of the spring training season, but it was when the cards were coming out at the candy stores. And I would be right up to the candy stores. And I said this before in other interviews, that there was a set of cards in the 52s, 53, Bowman, 50, that looked different from the others. I didn't immediately think that they were really art, that they were just a different kind of photograph. And as it was, they were art cards, and those were the last art cards that I ever saw in card city after those early 50s. So there was a span of years there where there was no art in baseball, which sparkled my mind. Once I became involved in sports, that how about that? That could be because there's a long story about Don Russ getting a license to sell cards because the courts overturned Topps's idea that they're the only ones that could do this. So Don Russ was a card company, but they know nothing about baseball. They didn't do baseball. They did Elvis Presley TV shows and golfers and stuff of that nature. And so when they got the license, they didn't know what to do, basically. They knew that they're going to be getting pictures from somebody. They would be hiring photographers, who they had a license to do. Anyway, they needed something to separate them from the rest of the pack. And the writer for the back of the card was Bill Madden, who was a sports writer. And he knew us because he collected the Perez-Steele cards that Frank Steele and I were doing before Don Russ got into the picture. And he was chatting with them. And they were talking about what can we do that's different. What they were trying to exploring what would identify them as a different card company. And Bill Mann said, you should talk to Dick Perez and Frank Steele because they do cards, art cards. So in essence, I think Diamond Kings. I think Bill Madden had a lot to do with the idea of the Diamond Kings coming into existence. So anyway, we talked. They called us and we met them, and one thing led to another, and before I I knew it. I was doing art cards again, and that was my whole purpose.
Now you were allowed to pick who was depicted on the cards, right? They didn't tell you we want these players. You were given that sort of poetic
They
license.
had no idea who Lenny Dykstra was, or they gave it to Frank and me to do since we at one time I think even Bill Madden might have been involved in it, but I don't think he wrote the cards for very long. And so Frank and I would decide a year before what's going to be the Diamond King for whoever in the following year. So we had half a season, the prior year of the actual card coming out, which there were some players who had identified themselves having a good year, and they continued to do that. Fortunately for us, except for a couple of them that we had to change at the last minute. But it was that. And it was the fact that these teams had their own stars. I mean, Johnny Bench, and, Steve Carlton, Mike Schmidt, they're shoo-ins for being a Diamond King. They already established careers. So we never had I think I read something the other day that said some of these players were nothing. I mean, nothing happened to them later, but they had a good year before. And one guy was that, I forget, Mark, you might remember the name of the Baltimore Oriole guy that had the fantastic year, and he was on PDE, and then he got caught and he went back down into the toilet. So anyway, he and I talked about it. We researched it, and then we told Don Russ, send us as many pictures as you can of these guys, because I didn't want them to send me one picture and that's what I'm going to paint. I was going to either make them up with a lot of pictures or choose one that was ideal. So they did that, and the style of illustration was totally in my hands. No matter what I did, they never said anything, and they never said I think that's too unrealistic or whatever, and they never interfered, and it was a great run for me. I mean, to have that that acceptance.
I got to ask the moniker, the name Diamond King. Was that something you came up with? Who came up with coined Diamond?
Yeah, Frank Steele actually came up with that. We were going to name it Diamond Star, and then but I think he said no. We had just found out in the 30s there was a card set called Diamond Stars. Mm-hmm. So we toyed around, and he thought, well, Diamond Kings, and that's fine. That sounded good to me. And he actually was the one that came up with Diamond, but he couldn't draw.
He was the brains behind the operation.
Yeah, right. It was.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Are you a new sports cards collector or someone returning to the hobby? Maybe you're just looking for a friendly, trustworthy hobby community to hang out with and enjoy collecting. Midwest Box Breaks has been bringing collectors together for many years with affordable breaks, helpful threads, and a Discord group packed with generous people who genuinely care about the hobby and other collectors. Check out the breaks at MidwestBoxBreaks.com. Our goal is to bring you as much value as possible. Also, find us on Twitter at Midwest Box Breaks.
Hey folks, John here. Just wanted to remind you, use the discount code MBB10 for 10% off your first order at MidwestBoxBreaks.com.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
We are back.
When you're doing these, did you know then, like, the significance this would be in the hobby? Did you have any sort of clairvoyance? Did you know the impact, or were you working and enjoying the process?
No, not at all. I just thought that people will accept it, they'll look at it, they'll talk of it among each other and all that, but I don't think it was going to become a collector phenomenon. So that, in fact, through the 15 years, I think something like that I did them, I never got a letter from anybody saying, I love this work or whatever, and I was getting fan mail from other things, from the Perez-Steele part. And so I just accepted the fact that, okay, I know that I was doing something special, but then I'm sure other people did too. And it was after these kids who collected these cards grew up. Email was around now. They got married, like Mark, and had a child. And all of a sudden, there was this common ground that and not only just sons but daughters too. I get emails too, but I get a lot of fan mail that asking me to sign cards and stuff, and I get them from all over the place. And I get family stories that will break your heart, because the father is collecting with his son because he's terminally ill, and then I get a letter telling me when he had passed. But I mean, this is the kind of connection that I never would imagine that would become. I even got and I think I showed it to Mark, a letter from a guy who was a murderer in prison. And I think he wanted cards to sell. He wanted to send me a bunch of cards that was given to him. And I don't know he was a murderer for sure, but he was in for about 25 years and he had 63 to go. So I mean, that's and he was some southern prison. And he said that he killed animals, and he did in his letter. It was a great letter, obviously. So, but I mean, these are the kind of things that, aside from the intent, the national intent was that I'm doing baseball cards, and I'm introducing something new to the collecting since 1952. It never dawned on me that it would do this. And then you get the call from a guy who is one of those guys who makes films. And he wants to make a film of me, and there he is. And so it's just part of the fortuity of my life. Everything that's happened to me is because I met the right people at the right time, and all I did was be reliable and do my best, and that took care of itself. Everybody asked, the Phillies asked I did started with the Eagles. The Phillies asked the Eagle who was doing their work because they would like me to do it too, and it just I met Frank Steele through the NFL. And that really did a lot for me. So a lot of it was luck, and then you have to do something with that luck, and I hope I did.
Well, I'm sure there was some hard work in there too, Dick. And so Mark calls you to do this film. Like initially, are you wondering like who's play? You hear movie, right? We all play that game, right? If there was a movie about my life, who would play me? Did you do any of that at all?
No. He was from the start. I knew what he was looking for, and because I've had a number of interviews, and one interview just led to another request, and I knew there was a story there. But I think the story is, I'm trying to separate myself from the story. But the story, as I see it, is an immigrant kid, art and baseball, and a love for the game. I mean, there's just a number of things there that go together and inspired me, and there was somebody out there who really appreciated it.
It is a good question though, Dick. If let's say this documentary gets turned into a feature film with an actor who plays Dick Perez,
probably Brad Pitt if he dyes his hair. God, I don't know. Me, I would like to do it. I'll dye my hair.
There you go. Mark, in doing documentaries, especially when someone is still around, thankfully, is there any difficulties in that? Do people sometimes maybe not want to talk about things, and you want to tell the whole story, right? You want to be as accurate, and is there difficult? When we see the finished product, it looks seamless and easy. Sure. As viewers, but as someone in the process and making these films, maybe not even with Dick, but even the prior stuff, is there difficulties with that sometimes?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it depends on the project and the subject for sure. My first film, it was the first film, and I probably should have been more collaborative with the subject, and but I'd always been told, like, you don't show anything because you don't show the subject anything, and so I kind of was just following those rules, and then I realized, what, I kind of wish I would have had them more involved so they weren't like scared about what was going to happen. And in that film, there was a lot of conflict in that story, and from the beginning though, we had decided we're not going to shy away from any of that, and we didn't. And then in Clay Dream, when I started that film, the subject Will Vinton was alive, and he passed away during the making of that, which I didn't expect. And I don't know if that film ended up being any different, because because of that. I certainly was continuing to make the film that I wanted to make. There might have been some people that were maybe not wanting to, maybe didn't want to talk to me for an interview. But then once he passed, they thought, okay, well, I can tell this story now. I didn't really want to tell it, but I wasn't looking for, like gotcha moments. And then with this story, in getting to know Dick, I realized really early, this isn't a story that I'm going to try to manufacture conflict or drama. It's just an inspirational story. I mean, he's his true life story is inspiring, and right down to the fact that he's been married to his wonderful wife Lou for 50 plus years, and so that's just the film that we're making, and the previous film that I made did have a ton of conflict, and I wasn't looking to do the same thing, but just in the baseball art world.
You spoke with your answer, you spoke sometimes with the difficulties of a movie where maybe someone doesn't want to say something or comment. This one you mentioned it was more of a happier story, if you will. I don't know if that's the right words. Do you have a preference, or just is what comes with the territory?
Yeah, I think every project is different. And every subject is different, and finding what the best version of that story is, again, you do have to kind of find that on every project. And we could look to try to, this story, hypothetically, it's we could look to try to create conflict in certain ways, but it's that's not the best version of the story anyway. So whereas the last film, I could have decided to avoid the conflict that was there in that story, and that wouldn't have been the best version. So it's just spending time with it and figuring out what's real, what's authentic, and what serves the story and the film the best way, and the subject.
Yeah, and another question piggybacking off that, you don't have to mention names, obviously. Have you ever had someone you wanted to do a collaboration, a film with or about, and they just didn't want to do it or be a part of it?
I mean, I've definitely had interview subjects that I've wanted to interview for a film about somebody else that I was hoping to get and that never came around. I mean, that happens. And then, yeah, I mean, there's been some people that I've thought, oh, this would be a great film, that I've reached out to, and we've had some conversations, and for one reason or another, it hasn't gone anywhere. And that happens too, but nothing, no stories where it's just oh my gosh, you got to hear this. Just things that come with the territory.
Yeah, no doubt. Back to Dick, and then you went in, and I don't know if I know this, but there might be some people who don't. I don't know how, but it does happen. Not everyone's aware. You did the Topps Turkey Red artwork as well. So kind of speak, this is obviously post Diamond Kings, your time with Donruss and Diamond Kings. How did that come about?
Well, at the time, and I think they're still doing it, Topps was paying homage to a number of card designs of the past. I thought that was great, because this is what Frank Steele and that's what we intended to do. The productions that we did, the celebration set, the Hall of Fame art postcard, the great moments, and few others, they were all based on the design cards of the past. So we were honoring and paying homage to design to baseball card. And Top was doing that. And they came to me to do terrible project, little 2x1 art, for collectors. And I would do these little paintings, which are terrible. I mean, a hard time doing them. And that was the first thing that I did. And then the ideas were all there. And they said to me, we're trying to do a card set of the Turkey Reds actual side. And I said, well, I'm ready. And they said, okay. And we picked 51 players, and we were talking, and time is passing by. And Top said, maybe we should get you some help with this. And I said, excuse me? I said, no. If you want to, either you want to get other players and other artists, well, then you just make the whole thing other artists. But if you're going to want me to do it, I want to be the guy that does the whole thing, because I would like the consistency of one style. And I have a great affinity. That is my favorite card set of all time, is the Turkey Red, even though they're outside. But they were wonderful period paintings there. And I tried to, so the rest of it was left up to me. I'm putting behind them a scene of a ballpark that the team that they play for now, like Alex Rodriguez, the Yankee. He's in front of the Highlander Park in New York, and I did that with just about all the players. And it was probably my best thing for them was that particular set, because it happened to be my personal best card set. So
you're a pioneer when it comes to card art. We've seen Topps in the last few years really sort of revisit that with the Topps Project 2020, the Spotlight 70. I've had some of those artists, half of the Project 2020 artists have been on this very podcast, and many of them sort of point to you, Dick, as sort of the inspiration or where they get, What do you think of where card art is today in relative to, where it was? Is it, what's your thoughts on the present day?
Well, I think the more the better. I think it's not going to be what it used to be, where you had the entire roster of rosters of baseball teams painted. But I think at subsets and special cards within the actual set, I think it's fine. And it just means, the last thing that I would do if my son or daughter came to me and said, I want to be a professional artist, I would say, why? It's like, it's an unsure future. How do you do that? It's like saying, I want to be an actor. I want to be a lead actor in movies. Well, that's almost the same kind of thing. So it's nice that artists are getting work, and artists who like baseball and also like to do art. So they're like versions of me out there, so to speak, enjoying the same thing that I enjoyed when I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, some of them have distinctively pointed to you and paid homage to, given credit to you. I meant to ask this earlier. Knowing you sort of picked the players to be depicted on the Diamond Kings you did, have you ever had a player politic for themselves? Like, hey, am I going to be in the Diamond King set anytime soon? Do you ever have that happen?
No, it never happened, and that's probably the reason I never thought, if there were good things to do, but it wasn't having any impact anywhere. So I think, let me see. Yeah, no, I don't. The only
react to Diamond Kings, though, right?
Pardon me?
You did have some players react to the Diamond Kings.
Yeah, I did, and one of them was, which is amazing. It just taught me how much players pay attention to themselves, but. I did a Diamond King, I believe, of
John Crook, right?
Yeah, Crook, who was in the San Diego uniform, but he was playing for the Phillies, so I just changed the uniform. And he just remembered the batting pose that, and it was a pose shot. It wasn't a game shot, which would help him identify better. And he said, you painted me with a wrong uniform, and you just changed it, didn't you? And this was at an art exhibit that he attended that I had in Philadelphia. And I say, yeah, you got a problem with that? It's who knows? You and I know are the only people who know now. And I've had players comment, not necessarily Diamond Kings, but I think Raleigh Fingers looked at me and said, you see that painting you did of me? And I said, yeah. I said, you have a sign in the back for the number of feet, which is in center field, and it's only like 340 feet. If I pitched in a ballpark that had a center field of 300, I wouldn't be in this building. So I said, well, I'm sure it was in the photo, and I couldn't find a photograph to prove it to him. And of course, Joe DiMaggio also, he was full of complaints, but he had one where I did a painting of him, and the collector was a friend of his and showed it, and he said, if I have a song like that, my God, I never. So they came back to me, and I said, I took it right from the photo. He did that. So I produced the photo, and I sent it to the guy, and then he sent me a magazine that had him on the cover that he's from 1950s that he autographed for me. But other than that, he was still a real piece of work, that guy.
Well, didn't he have a policy that he wouldn't sign any Perez?
Yeah, there's an autobiography, not an autobiography. It was a biography of him that tells in one of the chapters what he doesn't sign. Like he doesn't sign uniforms, he doesn't sign gloves. He does a litany of things that are hard to hold and write on, I guess. And he said, and then one of the things that was Dick Perez work, Perez-Steele stuff. He wouldn't sign any of that. The story was that he called my partner Frank, and he said to him, "Listen, I've got a complaint. I was walking on Main Street in Cooperstown, and I saw this card that you did of me, and it was selling for $355, and it was autographed by me, and I want to know where's my share of that." And Frank said, "You don't understand. This card is $355 or $75 because you signed it. The card actually was worth 50 cents. Because when we printed them all together and all that, the price per card was minuscule." And he said, so $50 for 50 cents, just like you and Billy Herman. He said, "Well, Billy Herman, you made a card and selling it for the same price as Billy Herman? Then you couldn't help him. You couldn't get him from away from himself."
Yeah, everyone's got a different size ego, I suppose. Some are apparently bigger than others. Mark, kind of coming down the home stretch here. Talk about this film, like the process. I don't want to, don't give out any trade secrets or any of that stuff. But was it easier to make with a subject like Mr. Perez, where maybe he's easygoing, and how long does the process take? And then when can people who want to see this film, when can we expect to see it?
Yeah, so I mean, the process has been really great working with Dick. He's been a great collaborator. We have a lot of fun every time we shoot, and it's just been great. And that's certainly not always the case. Sometimes people can be difficult, and this has been great. We got started. I think the first time we started shooting was last August. My previous two feature films both took about 5 years, and I was specifically looking for a project that I could do in a way that wasn't going to be a 5-year project. Where at first I thought, okay, this project with Dick Perez, maybe Dick will be the only person that I interview for the film, which my previous films I interviewed 50 people for each, and that takes you around the country, and it takes time, and it costs a lot of money. I have started interviewing some other people. John Thorne, the official historian of Major League Baseball, provided a great interview for this film, among some others. So I have gotten beyond that a little bit, but it's pretty cool to see what we've done, just since August. And right now we have a Kickstarter campaign that is live, and so I'd encourage all your listeners and viewers to check that out, because that will help us fund basically the rest of the film, so we can get it finished. The film itself will be out sometime in 2024. So by the time we finish shooting and then the editing and all that, and then putting it through distribution. But this Kickstarter campaign, it has some really great rewards that people can participate in exchange for a pledge. The one I think we're probably most excited about is there's a new Dick Perez card set that he designed. He's doing new paintings for. You got a little sneak peek of what will be the Tom Seaver. There's a Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez. So brand new paintings of current players, and then players from the past, starting from Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and Roberto Clemente. So people, they're limited. There's only 499 sets. So people will probably want to jump on that. But that's one of the handful of rewards that we're offering as part of this campaign.
And I'll make sure to get that in the episode notes as well, Mark. That way people can get over there, support the project, get some maybe cards in the process. It's a win-win, right? You're helping the film to get done, and if you're a card collector, you're going to maybe get some cards out of that, depending on what level you enter in on. But whatever the case may be, it's nice because it's sort of interactive. You almost feel like maybe a small part of the film as well.
Yeah, that's what I love about Kickstarter or crowdfunding, is you do find an audience that wants to help support this project, and they do become part of the team. And then when the film is out, they're generally the ones that they've been part of this process and they want to tell their friends about it. So I've always had a good experience experience. I've done this with all my projects in the past, and I've just found it's a good way to build the team out a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, I'll make sure that gets in the URL gets in the episode notes. So if you want to give it out though verbally as well, I'll put it in there written, in type form. But where can they go to find that?
Yeah, I mean the best thing will be to click the link, because they probably kind of have a lot of numbers, but it's a Kickstarter campaign, so it'll be on Kickstarter.com, and then the film title is The Diamond King, which is suitable, right? For
so if they search Diamond King, it should pop it up.
But we'll be sending the actual link out everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And like I said, I'll get that in the show notes. Well, gentlemen, this has been an honor and a privilege to speak with both of you today. For me, as someone in the hobby for 40 years myself, Dick, you don't envision, even when you start a podcast, even 5 years ago, right? You don't assume you're going to get the opportunity to talk to certain people who were instrumental in your hobby journey, and that happened today. So I want to thank both you gentlemen. I look forward to the film for sure. I know many others will as well, and not just hobbyists or collectors, but I think just fans of art, or like you said, Mark, a great story, right? You can come over, you can be an immigrant and be a huge success and be an inspiration to many others, as Mr. Perez is to many people, not just in the art world, but just in general. And I think that's a great message that I'm sure will be conveyed in the film. I'll give you guys both kind of the final words. Any websites or anything you want to steer people to, by all means, take your time.
DickPerez.com is you can get lost in there for days. It's great. A lot of his work is posted there, and I find myself, I go back to it all the time, because I'm always just kind of thinking about inspiration for new ideas. So I'll scroll through his site, and then if you don't have his book yet, Dick, I don't know when you released the first Immortals and then the supplement, but the Immortals book that Dick has put together it's an amazing coffee table book, and every baseball fan should own that book. So other than our Kickstarter campaign, I would direct people to those sites.
My website is great, because I think it's got all the plays I painted, and when you look at the collection of them, it's a lot of people that some of them people won't even know. But what I got out of this particular program is that I know that what I was doing was something. I was bringing art back to baseball, but I think with your conversation, John, was that you were talking to a number of artists, which means I brought artists also back to baseball. So I learned that. I mean, I wasn't thinking about that, but it's nice to know that I might have played a part in some of that. Yeah,
no, very true, and that's not lip service. That was them stating that. I mean, you're sort of the godfather of the genre. I know there's been other artists, and I'm not trying to, but you're sort of like really brought it to the forefront and made it mainstream, if you will, as it should be. And I always tell people, right, all cards are sort of little works of art in themselves, but when you actually have art be part of the card, even amplifies that even more. So again, thank you guys. I appreciate you making some time for the show, and maybe love to have you back on too once the movie's out. We can kind of revisit and talk about that. I definitely will be watching. So.
Good.
Thanks, John. It's fun.
Okay, thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank Marq Evans, Dick Perez for making some time out of their schedules to come on the show. It was a real honor for, again, a kid who collected in the 80s. Diamond Kings were the you-know-what to hobbyists and collectors, and enjoyed them. And just such an important part of my collecting history to think, that I get to talk to the gentleman behind that, right? One of them that so instrumental in my hobby journey and what I enjoyed and collected and loved pulling from packs. And Marq Evans, good on him, acclaimed director, and saw, the same thing that I did with, what Dick Perez meant to the hobby, to do this biopic, which will be coming out in 2024. I've included the Kickstarter link in the show notes if you'd like to support the film, be a backer of it. There are also only 499 sets produced, card sets, 22 card sets to be exact, with a great list of baseball players past and present that Dick Perez is doing again. And this set is just for the movie and just through Kickstarter. So exclusive with a capital E, only 499 sets produced. So they're going to go fast. You're going to want to jump on and get them. And again, I appreciate every guest we've had on this show. Mark and Dick were not 199 and 200. We've had 200 different people on this show, and I'm proud of that. And like to say I set that up that way on purpose, with Dick Perez being guest number 200. It was merely coincidental, but seems apropos as well. And it was a great honor to have him on this show and get to talk to him. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you learned a few things, because while I knew a lot of stuff about Diamond Kings and Mr. Perez, I learned a few things in the conversation as well.
For more than 30 years, Robert Edward Auctions has been the nation's premier auction house, specializing in sports memorabilia and trading cards. With significant experience and expertise in all major sport, non-sport, and Americana collectibles, REA has helped clients achieve record-breaking prices for their items, and has done so with a reputation for integrity and transparency. By actively partnering with collectors and enthusiasts throughout the entire process, REA has created the hobby's most trusted forum for selling high-quality collectibles. Go to robertedwardauctions.com for more information on how to buy or sell in their next auction. For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
That's a wrap on another edition of the Sports Card Nation podcast. Thank you to all the awesome listeners out there. Without you, there is no us. Thank you to all our great guests who drive this show, and also our wonderful sponsors who help us produce the great hobby content every week. Remember, another Hobby Quick Hits episode drops every Monday, and Sports Card Nation returns again next Friday. If you like the shows, we appreciate those positive reviews. Be well, and always remember, the hobby is the people.